Hello everybody, welcome along to the Rangers Review Saturday show. We are back, and this week we are dissecting that midweek draw against Motherwell. It's not the greatest of subject matter to be back here talking about on a Saturday, Josh, but we have to analyse everything that comes up in this season, what's and all, and this week isn't been a great one.
Yes.
After so much optimism earlier in the week, looking up to this game, picking our starting 11s, it all came crashing down a little bit on Wednesday night. But first, how are you this week?
Fine, but I'm a bit weary today, Blair. A bit
Yeah.
weary, won't lie. My voice, you just feel like you might be getting a cold. So, apart from that, fine. I thought it was, and you, I should ask. All right?
I
Good.
mean, all right, yes. As good as one can be. It's the games are coming thick and fast.
Yes.
I am trying to remain positive. I'm trying to remain optimistic. I'm trying to look at Sunday with a real excitement rather than a negativity. I think it's key after that game on Wednesday that we have to keep calm heads. We have to remain cool. We have to remain focused.
Sunday frames it so much, though, because if Rangers win on Sunday, then I think you look at it and you think Motherwell will take points off other teams. You only have to look at how things could have swung in the final 10 minutes of all three of Hearts, Celtic's, Rangers game. I don't think any of them were brilliant performances in the context. If they don't win against Hearts on Sunday, then I think it is a really bad week. So listen, loads of pressure on that game. We're going to get into what went wrong. We'll talk a little bit about team selection, but I feel we've done it to death. But
maybe not so much what went wrong, because a lot of people maybe know that for themselves, but more kind of how it went wrong and kind of break that down a little bit. But we won't be entirely negative. We'll spend the first half of this podcast talking about the Motherwell game, and then we'll move on to that game tomorrow, which I want to try and end on a bit of a positive note, because I've seen that the fans collective groups have all put out a statement saying that they want everyone to back the team and really get behind the side in this next run of games. So I think that's a mentality that we should be approaching it with. But let's go back to Wednesday. We were there. It was perhaps the coldest night I've experienced in a football stadium in a long time, and maybe that was just a little bit of setting the tone for what was to come, because it just Rangers froze on that stage, and Motherwell just looked like the better team by long stretches all over the park, roundly on and off the ball, dominated Rangers. But I think it all started when the teams came out and we were sitting in the press box, and everyone to a person in that press box was thinking, this isn't what we expected at all.
Yes, no, it wasn't. And I think it was at Rowe's press conference on Friday, and he was quite cryptic in not giving away much team news. And reading between the lines, I think what he was insinuating, either he was covering for the fact that he did feel he picked the wrong team, or he was basically saying, I can't tell you the full picture. He said that Ryan Nadiri got injured after he'd spoken to the press. Obviously, he speaks in the morning, so that's before the team trains. So by Sunday, Rangers will have trained twice more from when he speaks to the press on Friday morning. I think he got the team wrong, Blair. I think that also there needs to be a bit of perspective, because, for example, Ture Romans isn't going to play 3 games in a week because he's just come back from an injury. I do find it perplexing not bringing Andrei Skov-Olsen on, and I think the way he managed the game deserves a bit more criticism. It's hard to go too harsh on that, because I think he's got that so right. Rangers are top of the form table since Rule came to the club, but because he's kind of set those expectations because of the spend in January, and I think just because of how bad the performance was, that leads to the natural criticism that's going to follow. So I thought it was a strange team. I also just thought, as we'll come on to discuss about Motherwell, Rangers, and Rose said this, are a team, he's not said this, but kind of talked around it. Rangers don't have a clear, discernible on-ball identity, do they? And that's something that we've spoken about a lot.
I don't think Danny Rowe has to say that. I think that anybody watching Rangers this season knows that they don't particularly have an identity, and like we've spoke about
but they do off the ball. They have clean. He said it himself. He said it last week on Premier Sports. It was not easy when I took over. You have to win games. then you can speak about the final third stuff. And he was referring to the fact the Rangers scored those 13 goals in 2 games, admittedly 10 men, Queen's Park, but still they weren't doing that a few months ago. And we spoke on the Saturday show, I think last week, about, okay, how will individuals add this improvement in the final third while you've not got the coaching time to implement ideas and the consistency to, I guess, have similar players in similar situations. So he's got Rangers back into this title race by managing games well, by playing the margins with set pieces, with clean sheets, with defensive solidity. But all that kind of tinkering, if you like, doesn't lend itself to, I think, kind of the familiar, this is how we dominate games with the ball, this is how we set the tempo of games with the ball, that Motherwell clearly have. The difference, I'd say, is Motherwell, results-wise, weren't great for the first couple months of the season because they were prioritising the process over the results, whereas Rule, rightly, as he's spoken about a lot, he couldn't do that. You know, Rangers could be playing brilliant football and be fifth at the moment, but naturally everyone would be raging. So
Which is probably what would have happened had Russell Martin stayed in charge. Rangers might have ended up developing into a really good footballing team, but they would be nowhere near a title race. Yeah,
exactly. So I think it was just kind of, I've said since, I think Motherwell are the best football team in terms of you know, the kind of connotations of that. And if you
best
look
team to watch, nicest team on the eye. I think I would put it that way.
But also the most comfortable with the ball. I really think they are. You look what they've done to Rangers and Celtic at home. So he probably just came up against a really good opponent too. And because normally he's managed to manage games well, you think of how he changed things against Celtic. You think of all his different tactical plans. I think it was more illuminating because he wasn't able to do that on this occasion, and because there was more of an expectation that Rangers would play their strongest team, whatever that means, with at least one more of their January arrivals.
Well, let's talk about the subs, because as you rightly pointed out there, that is something that Danny Rule has quite rightly got a lot of credit for this year. He's got a lot of credit for the way his in-game management, the way that he's managed to change games around. The prime example of that is at Parkhead, where he changes it about. He brings on Mohamed Diamande, and for that 25-minute period in the second half, Rangers win the game. And a lot of that is down to Danny Rule reading what's happening on the park and changing what he was up against. Now, again, let's caveat that by saying he was up against one of the worst managers in the league at that point, which I think will go down in the annals of history as maybe one of the worst appointments across the city. But he still had to beat what was in front of him. It wasn't going Rangers' way, and he managed to change it. But that makes what we've seen on Wednesday even more baffling and harder to understand, because he went through 3 different formations, and then even when Motherwell went down to 10 men, he seemed to invite pressure on to Rangers. He seemed to invite Motherwell onto them by just sitting a little bit deeper and going to a 3 at the back. And it just seemed as though it was a rare tactical misstep in game from a man who's proved so proficient at it so far this season.
Yeah, I wonder if he had 3 central midfielders, if he would have stayed in a 4-3-3 instead of going to a 4-4-2. But I do agree that then you had Nadiri and Trumiti defending their box. Didn't feel that natural. Going to the back 3, it invites pressure, but also I think if you concede a goal and you don't bring an extra centre back on, then we were saying, why didn't you bring an extra centre back on? So I think that Rule has done... I keep going back to it because I do think the overall context is important, Blair. But even if you look at the first half of that game, and we'll come on to talk about this a little bit, Motherwell and Rangers are approaching that game in different ways. They're attacking in different ways. So there's upsides to that and there's downsides to that. One of the downsides to Rangers' approach is they didn't have much control, but because they're playing quite directly, in an instant they can have a chance, which happens with the Yusuf Trumiti chance, which encapsulates the 2 styles really nicely for me, because it comes, I think, because Stephen Welsh is trying to keep the ball with a header instead of just kicking it long. He loses the ball then in a dangerous area, and Trumiti, because of Rangers, the direct way that they attack, have a chance in an instant. And if he scores that and it's 2-0, we're probably having a very different conversation.
And the fact that Yusuf Trumiti misses a sitter, there's nothing Danny Rule can do about that.
Yeah, and I do think he needs he needs individuals to step up. However, on the other side, you know, why is Skov also not coming on to when there's space to run in behind? Was it one change too many? So yeah, I think you can criticise him, and the context is important too, because as I say, does he invite pressure going to a back 3? Does he make the subs too late? Maybe, but if he doesn't bring on that extra centre half, we're probably speaking about that too.
It is a lot of, and I always find this about analysing football in general. I know it's really hard to say because it did happen, but if Motherwell don't score that goal, this game is framed completely differently. Even though for 94 out of the 95 minutes the same stuff happened, it's viewed completely different. I think it's you hear managers talk about this quite a lot. It's not about the result, it's about the performance. And I think that's really what that means. Whereas even if Rangers had won the other night, it would have still been pretty worrying because Motherwell completely dominated. And the fact that they managed to just get over the line would have been, okay, he's won another game, he's kept this winning mentality. Doesn't change the fact that they were outplayed by Motherwell on and off the ball.
But I think that's what, do you not think that's, I wasn't that surprised that Motherwell dominated. And I think that's what, because they're really good, and that's what a real, Motherwell looked like a team that had been doing the same thing since the summer. And Rangers looked like a team who are focused on winning and results orientated because they have to be. And I just think that's what materialised, Yes, again, hopefully we're not repeating a point. I think Rule gets stuff wrong within that fixture, but also those things are simultaneously the things that have got Rangers back into the title race, changing all the time, using your squad so you don't get a load of injuries. And I think we're going to speak a little bit about goalkeepers, not to isolate it on Jack Butland, but just to show how differently.
Let's go into that just now. Let's talk about the goalkeepers just now, because I know you want to bring up in terms of the goalkeepers having the ball, which is something we often don't really think about too much. Jack Butland's always one that's held up. Either he throws one in or he keeps one out, and that's kind of how a lot of people just they'll judge how a goalkeeper plays, how a goalkeeper gets on. If he pulls out these saves, I thought Jack Butland played, from a layman's point of view, I thought Jack Butland did what he had to do on Wednesday night, but maybe that's not quite the case in terms of contrasting the two keepers.
You see, if this game happened in a year's time, then I'd be like, oh dear, this is bad. But again, so these stats I think will show not necessarily one good, one bad, but two different styles, and how they Motherwell were more effective at implementing their style. So top line stats is Motherwell had, I think, 64% of possession, and they completed 80% of those passes. Rangers had 34%, completed only 69% of those passes, which is really low. And if we put up on the screen just now the two goalkeepers pass map. So on the left of the screen, you can see Callum Ward. On the right of the screen, you can see Jack Butland. Butland completed 48% of his passes compared to Ward completing 79%. Big difference. And Butland kicked the ball beyond the halfway line 17 times compared to Ward 6. And this is not a simple Ward is good, Butland is bad. I think Butland has made a lot of key saves for Rangers. You go back to Hibs and that penalty kick. You look at his run of form, bar that moment against Kilmarnock. Okay, Rangers are 3-0 up. You look at his run of form since that game. But Motherwell are set up to play this way, where the goalkeeper was kind of the extra outfielder. So you look at the red is passes completed, yellow are passes uncompleted. Ward is often looking short. The majority of his passes in his own half are complete, whereas Butland, you can see it's long, it's straight, it's vertical, which again doesn't lend itself to control.
I mean, you look at that there. The red passes are completed passes. Only 3 of Jack Butland's kicks over the halfway line actually find a man.
Yeah, and honestly, I think if you showed that to Danny Rule before the game, it's not as if Butland didn't do what he was told.
Yeah.
Although I don't think Rangers were really set up for second balls, so I was a bit confused with their approach there. And we shouldn't forget that for their goal, they played through the press brilliantly. We just didn't really see that after, did we? Where the ball goes wide, it's a good pass from Giga, and Diamande does brilliantly. But yeah, so it's not to say that Butland only completed 30% passes less than Ward. He did a bad job. I think it's, again, an example of how the two teams are playing differently. And if we move that on to these kind of couple of graphics here, Blair, the first one will just show us Ward. This is 5 minutes into the game. Rangers actually pressed well from this situation and won the ball back, although Motherwell quickly won it back, and that was the chance they had at the back post. But you see Ward here with his foot on the ball, he's inviting pressure, and Motherwell basically have a 5v4, and that's obviously then if they have a 5v4 there, they have an extra man down the pitch, and that's how they use their goalkeeper in possession. And Rangers, whether they can or don't with Jack Butland, don't tend to do that much. If we move it on to...
That also feeds into this idea that something that really struck me from the other night was that the Motherwell players, every one of them to a man, are happy to receive the ball under pressure.
Yeah.
Every one of them.
Because
you can't say that for Rangers players.
But and again, like maybe next season, I don't think Rule will play this kind of possession-centric ball. And listen, Russell Martin tried it at the start of the season, and implementing it is tough, and he stopped trying to implement it after a while, and you're left in this kind of horrible middle ground.
Yeah.
But Motherwell, they controlled the game because they controlled the ball from their goalkeeper. And if we move the frame on to just an example of Butland in the first half, you can see here that Rangers do technically have a 3v2 with Giga and Suter and Butland. Maswanise is closing down. And the next image, Butland chooses to kick long when Toshi Chukwani's kind of got his arms out, but there's not as many Rangers players crowding the ball because they're going up to win one of the second balls. So this is something we've seen in Old Firm games a lot. I think Rangers and Rule will want to move their style to have more control with possession. I don't always think there's a right and wrong, as much as we all have our styles that we prefer. Because I was watching Arsenal on Thursday night, and David Raya, Arsenal are top of the Premier League. David Raya launches it just about every single time. Just about every single time.
It can work. We're not sitting here saying that long ball is not effective.
Nah.
Because it's, as we've said before, it very obviously is. It's coming back into vogue. It's coming back into fashion, and teams are liking that sort of direct style and that direct sort of play.
Yeah.
But you have to have the tools to do it, and you have to be set up to do it.
Yeah.
Which it did seem a lot like Rangers were just lumping it and hoping.
Yeah, and I just think on this occasion, Motherwell were able to Motherwell implemented what they wanted to do better than Rangers implementing what they wanted to do. Yeah. Again, the if Trimiti finishes that chance, then maybe we're saying, Rangers score from a pressing
it's a different game altogether. Yeah.
But I think the one concern was Rangers didn't really have control, and I think the way that both of their goalkeepers were instructed to play shows that the difference in style. I don't think the Rangers will have those issues really against another team, because I don't think Martin O'Neill's Celtic play like that. I don't think Derek McInnes's Hearts play like that, and I think Motherwell are a genuinely brilliant team for their resource and the job that has been done there. But yeah, this is how Rule's played, and we've praised him rightly so for being street smart, for being pragmatic, for changing shape. And the reason that he said after I'd have taken a point, and he clarified that in his press conference too, I don't think he was saying I'd have taken that pre-match. I think he was saying because Motherwell were better in the context, that it wasn't the worst point in the world based on how both sides performed and how both sides turned the game into the type of game that they wanted, I think.
Yeah, and I think that this game, as we said, will be framed so much by what happens on Sunday. Because I think that, and I don't necessarily think this is the wrong way to look at it, but I think everybody, in terms of fans, in terms of journalists, we've all been looking at it as one game at a time. We've all been looking at it as, okay, first Rangers need to go to Fir Park, and then they need to play Hearts at home. Whereas it almost sounds as though the way that Danny Rule has been thinking about this is that he's seen these two games joined together. He's seen them as a duo. And I think that in his mind, now, crucify me in the comments if you want, but I do think that in his mind, he's seen these two games and thought 4 points is a good return out of those two games. And he's wagering that he can use his squad and manage the minutes of his squad over those two games, with it being the last midweek game for a while, and thinking, okay, I'll get 4 in one sort of combination or another. The tricky thing is, Rangers have already had their slip-up. They've already dropped the points. If they'd won on Wednesday, they go into the game on Sunday thinking, okay, a draw is not a terrible result. Now it's put all the pressure on Sunday that Rangers have to go and win. Yeah,
it has, and I agree with you. I think Rule would maybe have taken 4 out of 6. The 2 home games against Celtic and Hearts back to back. That's their opportunity. I think Rangers lost the round. There's 12 more rounds to go.
Yeah.
They can only afford to, like, games are running out as well in this one game at a time. Yeah. They're still top of the form table since Rule came in, and that is important to stress because he was never going to do a perfect job. He is still a relatively young manager, and I think he's exceeded a lot of expectations so far. So yes, I think that there was mistakes there with how he managed the game. Clearly didn't bring on Skov Olsen and Romans for a reason. Also, I think it was just in isolation. What Rangers tried to do wasn't as effective as Motherwell's. And, there's that saying, one of Guardiola's ex-assistants, I think it was Joan Malilo, the faster the ball goes forward, the faster it comes back. And the other aspect of their playing long balls is Maswinise almost chance that Giga does brilliantly to kind of get the foot in. That comes from Rangers going long, but not having control. And quickly conceding an attack into space. So I guess it's all a trade-off. Generally, that's worked in Rule's favour. Rangers have got a lot of points without dominating in the way that we'd maybe think they would dominate. They found a way to just win. And I guess Hearts is a more an opponent they probably rather face, because I think Hearts and Rangers will try and play a similar game. And I think Rangers will back themselves to be better at home.
I think it'll be a completely different game, because also there's a psychological aspect to this, because Hearts have got so much riding on it as well. And I'm not saying that Motherwell didn't have a lot riding on it, that they didn't want to win. Of course they did. Of course they wanted to get 3 points. And like I spoke to Graham McGarry last week, Motherwell aficionado, talking about the side, and he says they've got designs on potentially third, even second, if they really they really had a good patch of form. So there's still plenty to play for them. But as we've seen at Tynecastle this season, when we've been there with Rangers, Hearts fans are getting nervous, and I imagine the Hearts team are starting to think about, okay, this is on. We are in real pole position to go and do this now. So I think it's going to be much cagier. I think it's going to be a bit more of a bit more attritional. I think it's going to be a bit more of a battle.
Oh yes.
I don't think there's going to be a lot of great football getting played, but I think it's going to be a bit of a fight to win this game. And if I take us on to our predicted teams for this game,
talk me through yours.
So this is the way I've gone for this. This I actually think might be Rangers' strongest starting 11 on paper for me.
And Manoa Gassama?
Yeah, I think
really?
so. I think so. And I'll tell you for why, Josh.
Okay.
So obviously the back four is the back four. I think Dujon Sterling, mistake aside the other night for the Motherwell equaliser when he isn't strong enough for that ball, which is uncharacteristically of Dujon, but we'll say he's just coming on the park, he's maybe not up to the speed of it. We'll let him away with it for now. I think he comes in because James Tavernier was not brilliant the other night, but he was only in the team, I think, because Sterling, as I said before, can't play 3 in a week.
Yep.
So he comes back in. Tua Romans, as okay as Jaden Migoma was, I think Tua Romans has the potential to take you up a level in that position.
Agreed.
So I think he's in there as well. I think in midfield,
Just quickly, defence. I thought Giga was Rangers' best player.
Park.
And I thought Sewer made the mistake for the goal.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I think Nasser Giga could find himself hard done by to be left out of my team here. Yeah. But I don't think you interrupt that John Suter, Emmanuel Fernandez partnership if it's fit. If
his experience of
they have that sort of thing going on. So I would go with those two if they're both fit. The middle of the park, I think Tochi Chukwane has been one of Rangers' best players in the last few weeks. Mm-hmm. So I think that him in the middle of the park offers you that physicality, it offers you that ball winning. I think Nico Raskin will be confident after getting a goal, and he showed as well what he can do breaking forward. So I'm putting the two of them in there. Again, I'm dropping Mohamed Diamande. I know I didn't put him in my lineup for Motherwell. I know he did well for the goal, but I think you need two in there who are really going to battle. And as much as Mohamed Diamande can be good on the ball and playing himself out of tight situations, I don't quite think that's what Rangers need. And also, what I think it does do is if Diamande plays it in that central area, it congests it a little bit for Mikey Moore, who I think should be number 10. I don't think Mikey Moore should be on the wing under any circumstances because he gets lost. He is totally ineffectual when he's playing at the byline. I don't see it at all. So with that in mind, I want two guys either side who are going to be either your wingers hitting the touchline,
Yep.
or they're going to be able to invert with Sterling, more so Romans coming on down the wing. Scott Olsen has to come back in for me. I think he's your big money signing. I think optics wise, more than anything else, he has to play from the start. If it was a minute loading issue on Wednesday, then there's no excuses for Sunday because he's fresh.
These are the type of games he needs to win.
Absolutely.
No,
Absolutely.
No pressure, Andreas.
No pressure, Andreas. But we're looking for you, looking to you, son. I think Oliver Antman played well against, again, it is Queen's Park. I think he looked confident. He looked as though he can deliver a ball, which I think Ryan Nadiri would love to feed off of. Ryan Nadiri, by the way, has to absolutely start over Yusuf Chermiti, and I don't think I need to explain myself on that point after that performance the other night. Oliver Antman comes in, and you mentioned Jedi Gassama there. Gassama is an impact player. He is a better player off the bench, and I don't mean that.
You go back to Panathinaikos, to be fair, actually in Europe, it's a good point. Both his goals early on in the first European game were off the bench, weren't they?
I don't mean that disparagingly. I do not mean that in a bad way. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer made a career out of it, right? This is a very integral position, especially in the modern game where we are constantly told about starters and finishers in football. And it's almost as important to be a finisher as it is to start the game. And I think Jedi Gassama is 10 times the player that he is coming off the bench to exploit space. So I think if you start Jedi Gassama, you lose so much of what you get out of him.
That's a good argument, actually, the Gassama one. And I hadn't really thought of the impact in European games, and I thought he was bad in midweek. The only changes I have, I've went with Suter and Fernandez as well, went with Romans and Sterling. I think it's a game for duels, to quote Mikel Arteta, and
win your individual battles.
Power, and that's what Hearts are going to do. So Rangers have to have physicality across the pitch. I do think it's harsh on Giga, but Suter's experience is probably favoured. I went Diomande and Raskin because, again, experience of the fixture. I think Diamande's probably been Rangers' best midfielder on the ball since the turn of the year out of the three of Chukwueze and Raskin. I think Raskin and Diomande have a partnership. They've played in a lot of big games together, but I wouldn't be surprised if Chukwueze is in there. I've went for Gassama as the only difference in the final third. However, I would like to make a potential alteration. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Mikey Moore off the left and Tello Asgard in the number 10 position. Because I'm predicting, not saying what I want. This is probably the team I'd want, because I agree with you. I want Moore in that number 10 position. Set pieces are going to be so important. Hearts and Rangers alongside Dundee United, the best set piece teams in the league, Blair, and I just think that that is what Rule has done at points. You might look then for the impact of Gassama off the bench. So not a ton of areas where I disagree with you at all. That's a team I'd probably like to see, but would I be surprised if it's Tello Asgard and Mikey Moore? No. What I don't want to see is Gassama and Asgard, because I thought that really didn't work at Easter Road, and I think you need more of a passer in there. If you're looking at that team outside Nadiri in the back line, you've not got a ton of height, so maybe that influences Rule to even go with Chukwueze 4 set pieces, because you think of him against Queen's Park. Okay, a smaller team, but he's a little bit bigger than Diomande. And again, I guess the point of this episode, how he's got Rangers into this title race is not really what they've done in open play with controlled possession. It's about transitions and set pieces and all those different moments. So maybe he picks a team knowing Hearts will try and do something similar to win that. My
worry with Asgard would be that he's too slow.
I think that's fair, and I think aside from the Aberdeen game away from home, and Aberdeen are poor this season, he's not played to the tempo of these type of games.
The Hearts game is going to be a million miles an hour. Yeah, it is going to.
Whereas Moore could do that in the number 10 position.
Moore can pick the ball up and carry it at any pace because he's that good. And I think it's going to start like an absolute steam train. And Tello Asgard often looks as though he wants 2 or 3 touches. And especially at Ibrox. Taylor Asgard, I know this shouldn't play into things, right? But Taylor Asgard's stock is not particularly high amongst the Rangers fans right now. And if he gets caught in the ball a couple of times in the first 10 minutes, Ibrox is going to turn.
It's also worth noting Hearts might play a back three. They're quite kind of unpredictable, and that might influence rules thinking as well. Maybe to like critique my own team that I've drawn up a few minutes ago. Maybe you won't. Maybe it will be one of Chukwueze and Moore, or one of Diomande and yeah, basically Asgard will be in there if it's Diomande, and Chukwueze will be in there if it's Moore. To give you another physical profile in the midfield.
Yeah,
let's see.
Yep, and I'm trying not to be too down about it. Like I said, I started this episode by saying I think we should be calm. I think we should be level-headed, and I think we should relish games like Sunday, because it's been a long time since it's been a proper title race, and Rangers can really count themselves as being in amongst it. So I think that the fans, they have to turn up and not feel this game.
I think it'll be a big atmosphere. Yeah, it'll definitely be a big atmosphere, and yeah, it's. Sorry, I interrupted your flow there.
Yeah, no, I think they should just turn up and not feed it, and really embrace it, and think if Rangers go and win on Sunday, it's a massive twist and turn once again, because there's a long way to go in this title race. Long way to go. Yeah,
no, there is. There is obviously the contrast is if they even a draw. I think draw's fine, but you're running out of games, then you've got to go away to Tynecastle.
So don't let my optimism cover for the fact that I'm not saying it's a must win. I think if Rangers don't win, then it puts them in really behind the 8 ball. I think
I don't. Can they? Could you say that their title hopes are over? It would be 8 points.
I would say they're going to start needing snookers if they're 8 points behind. Because, like you said, we're running out of games. But
they've been strong at home under Danny Rule domestically.
I still think there is a long way to go. My issue is if Rangers don't win on Sunday, I can't see Rangers winning every game between now and the end of the season. That's probably what they would need to do. So I think that a win on Sunday is imperative. I think that a draw midweek will look like an okay result if a win comes. If that doesn't come, then the inquest will start on Monday morning, and Danny Rule will have a lot of questions to answer, which he hasn't really had to yet in his Rangers tenure. But as he will learn very quickly, the tide of public opinion at Rangers can shift within hours, never mind weeks or days.
And I'm off on holiday from Tuesday, so I will leave you and Chris and Derek to deal with the fallout should it ensue. But I if I was to be asked for a prediction, Blair, I do think Rangers will win, or I think they should be confident of winning, maybe because they've been good at home under Danny Rule. And I actually think if you look at the 2 games against Hearts, I think Rangers have deserved more than they've got out of it. But you also need to say that Hearts have that intangible ability to pick up results late on. They've done fantastically well to be top of the league since the 3rd game of the season, and they do have individuals who can provide moments. They've strengthened in the January window. Derek McInnes is so experienced in these fixtures, so it's going to be difficult, and it is. We throw this term around a lot, but I think it is must win in terms of title hopes.
Yep. Well, I'm certainly looking forward to it. Of course, stay with the Rangers Review for all your coverage of that game tomorrow, where myself, Joshua and Chris will be at Ibrox. We're once again sending the full squad to cover this huge game in this tantalising title race. But for now, on this Saturday morning show, thanks for watching and thanks for listening.